Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, wishing you a happy Daily Start to Slice Friday as we wrap up this week. And there are actually, yet again, a couple of very big things coming up in the not-so-distant future, actually between today and Sunday, that is. That's really going to set the tone for the next, basically, few weeks into the end of December, probably even to the beginning of January as well. Anyways, with that said, I also wanted to follow up on the short-term timeframes as we were looking for a nice little pumpola party yesterday. Fun times as Bitcoin does put in a $400 move. Pretty crazy, or I guess $600 move right there. But that's just what we've been relegated to in recent times. Anyways, other than that, I should let you know that the HPDR indicator is now live. It can be found in the link in the description below. And then also Bybit has their Apex DEX integrations now fully live as well, which means that you can essentially trade on a decentralized exchange right there on Bybit. Again, there is a link to that in the description below, and I think that comes with like all of their promotions and whatnot, which is like 0% on maker fees, blah, 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 blah. You can read about that in the old shill section down below there. All right, sweet. So let's just jump right into it. Let's get to the fun stuff of the day, and that is going to be right on over here with the HPDR indicator. So yesterday we were looking for a nice little pumpola based off the statistics from this setup. What essentially was a setup? It was a closure below the bottom side of the blue zone, as you can see right here on the 4-hour time frame, plus the first decrease on the BBWP, the volatility moving average, which happened officially right here. That fired off 2 days ago on the 7th, which gave us a bias within the next day and a half to 2 days, which brings today basically, for a nice little upside move with a high probability. So that's what we were looking at essentially on this page over here. Let me just bring you down to the actual stats for the 4-hour time frame. Where are we? There we go. Lovely. And yeah, it was pretty high probability play, about 78%. Going in that direction to the upside. And we were looking at the time on average about 41 hours. That's what I was saying, about a day and a half to 2 days, which basically where we're at right now. And then also as far as the actual move itself goes, on average, looking for about 3.76, so 3 3/4 on average. If we were to take a first standard deviation measurement of that, that'd give us a range between about 2% all the way up to almost 6%. So let's just see what we've seen thus far. Whoa, hey, don't delete my damn data right there. Let me just get this out of the way really quickly. And yes, thus far we have seen from that signal given to the next to our current highs about 271. So we are at the bottom end of the, or I would say, yeah, we're actually, well, we're kind of in between the bottom and the first standard deviation, and then also the average. Again, the bottom side of the first standard deviation is 180. The average is 3 3/4 there. So could it be reasonable to expect more on this particular move? Again, keeping in mind that the timing of this would give us until about the end of today. Well, I suppose yes, within the context of today's price action. And if we were to see the full-on average play out, well, that would be 3 3/4, which puts Bitcoin at about 17,400 or so. Of course, you know, there could be more as well. If we were to go for the hopium move on there, that would be the top side of the first standard deviation at 5 3/4 almost, which would give us a range between about 17,400. Let me just bring this down a little bit. Perhaps even all the way up to about 17,700 or so, which would be a nice and welcome move right there. So let's go see what else kind of corroborates that story and what to be aware of in the more medium term. In the short term, however, I would say, you know, this would actually be kind of a good place for a little bit of a short-term pullback ultimately. But let's now pop in over here and follow up on another thing that we were looking at yesterday, which is the head and shoulders failure move right here. So let me just get rid of all of the indicators and just look at this. And what do you know? We did have a head and shoulders on price action. Let me just kind of zero in it a little bit better. We had the right volume signature right here. We had a left shoulder, we had a head, we had a right shoulder. We had a neckline at about 16,650. We said that, hey, given that setup, this is actually a really good opportunity for one of those trap movements. And so whenever you do see a head and shoulders, you know, I'm not a humongous fan of patterns. I'm not a humongous fan of like most things, honestly. I'm not a humongous fan of most TA, to be honest with you. Like whenever people say TA is bullshit, I'm like, I kind of agree for the most part. 80 to 90% of at least what I see. I care about statistics. I care about quantitative analysis mediated by technicals and also other things as well. But it's a combination of all of them. Anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent right here. But in this case, whenever you do have a head and shoulders, it is just as relevant to be looking at the failure of that as well. And in this case, when you do see a closure above the right side shoulder, you do have a potential for that failure move, which would give us a measured move target, actually all all the way up towards, guess fucking where, 17,700. Oh shit, that number sounds familiar. Not only would it be right around that region, but it would also be in alignment with the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement. And even, as you can see, this white moving average kind of sloping down here, that is the 200 simple on the 4-hour time frame, which Bitcoin hasn't tested in like a month, by the way. Being that it is a shorter term time frame, that is kind of a that is kind of a long time. Anyways, in this case, do I think that there's another leg on this one? Probably yes. Is in the short term, does Bitcoin pull back? Also probably yes. But here's the big thing. I would essentially be looking for continuation to new highs on this rally if Bitcoin essentially remains above about 17,000 bucks, or if you want to be super exact on CME, it'd be 16,980 on a 4-hour closing basis. Below there, fuck it all yet again, but as long as Bitcoin's above there, probabilities still remain with likely an upside continuation, maybe until like early next week. Anyway, speaking of early next week, I did want to now go into a few of the other things that we were looking at from yesterday's analysis. One was the very low volatility on the 4-hour time frame. We can obviously see that that's expanding right now, but two is going to be matching that up with stochastic momentum, which we can find out over here. And let's start it off with the daily. So the daily time frame on CME is going to continue with upside momentum as long as Bitcoin's closing above about 17,100. So that's actually even about $100 above the pivot that I just gave on a 4-hour time frame closing base. But you can see how the 4-hour would then kind of lead into the daily if that was essentially violated. The 12-hour time frame is actually going to have a chance to cross the upside here after a bit of a corrective move. Again, assuming that Bitcoin essentially remains above that same pivot on the daily, 17,050 in this case. 6-hour time frame is going to be upside pivoted as long as Bitcoin's above 16,800. 4-hour time frame was obviously upside from yesterday. That was now currently pivoted at 16,900, and the hourly should probably be down actually if I had to guess. And it is down as long as Bitcoin's below 17,280 again on CME. So what does it all mean? Nobody knows. It's all just a mystery. Well, if I had to put all the puzzle pieces together, very, very short term, Bitcoin very likely trades sideways here and probably tries for a pullback. The real question to me is, does Bitcoin violate about 17,000, basically 17,000 bucks on a closing basis for a 4-hour time frame during that pullback? If it does, at that point, I'd be looking for another move back down to, probably yesterday's lows, maybe try for another bounce there, but likely that bounce would fail if I had to guess. And of course, if 17,000 bucks does hold, then I would say that those upside targets still will remain probably coming into early next week. Anyways, with that said, and with that big pivot in mind, I do want to now get into what I think is probably going to be really, really important coming into the end of this weekend, which is actually going to be the 5-day time frame. So the 5-day time frame, which is closing on Sunday for spot price actions, have a chance to force the 5-day stochastic momentum to the upside from an extremely low region right here. Also would be simultaneously playing out a nice, a nice trend line regression test over here and rejection as well. So that'd be another good indication that Bitcoin's probably poised for a greater bounce. It could very easily extend into the mid 18s, maybe even 19s as well. Again, that would probably be later this month, so it's not super relevant for this exact moment. And then, of course, the other thing that we could probably be looking at right here is going to be the 2-day time frame, which I'm currently on right now. And this one is actually very, very interesting to me here because we have seen the full-on collapse or contraction phase of the 2-day time frame volatility represented by BBWP right here. So this setup is, for the super aggressive people, they're going to look at it as like, okay, this is pretty juicy right here. For the not aggressive people like myself, you're probably gonna be waiting a while. And personally speaking, I do think this one's gonna take a little bit of time to set up. I think you're gonna do something like that and then see it lift off. But the setup is a brewing, of course. And anytime that we have a setup brewing, I do want to be aware of that, and then also the direction of the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator, because the direction of the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator has been correct on getting the direction, which on average has been about a 35% move, 84.5% of the time. So the stochastic oscillator is correct 84.5% of the time. The average move about 35%. Again, first standard deviation analysis of this gives us a big range between about 25.5% all the way up to 44%. But from that actual signal given, that could give us targets into, and this again would not be relevant until probably early January. This does take about 3 weeks on average to play out. So yeah, probably early January, but that could give us targets into, January, I suppose, into the shallow $20,000 territory. Now, of course, again, this one's very far, or in my opinion, a little bit further away from getting confirmed, but that's kind of what's at stake. And of course, as long as the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator remains to the upside, the probabilities remain in favor of, higher term time frame upside continuation. In this case, 15,900 is going to be the number to beat, not today, but tomorrow, actually. So again, as long as Bitcoin remains above there, still long term, looking a little bit more like that. I think also of interest here is just gonna, well, do I want to talk about this? No, I won't talk about this. I'll save this for the weekend. But another thing potentially of interest is that SPY and NASDAQ, by the way, but SPY I think is just a little bit more interesting right here. Is showing on the daily hidden bullish divergence, actually. Hidden bullish divergence alongside incredibly low volatility reads. And this is actually a phantom call on characteristic RSI, which is actually, in my opinion, very, very interesting just because that's one of the things that indicator can do that like I can't do just from looking at a fucking RSI. But in this case, probably does at least provide a little bit of short-term upside. Again, these markets are more correlated than not, typically speaking, not always, obviously, but just another sort of corroborating thing that, hey, if Bitcoin Bitcoin could very easily make another move to the upside, somewhere around about 17.5 to 17.7, let's say. At that point, I'd be looking for another short-term pullback. It's just basically this region right here. Ultimately, I mean, it's nothing too crazy, just playing around the 0.5 there. And then we come back to it after that and see if the other higher term timeframes start to align with a continuation of this bounce. I still want to reiterate what I've been saying for a while now. Whether or not this is the macro low, I don't fucking know. But what I can say is that I do still think that Bitcoin likely trades out higher here before potentially going lower, which I think would happen, around late Q1 2023 or Q2 of 2023. So yeah, I think that's a good place to be leaving off on this particular video. I'm going to be wishing the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.